clothes with this method that we now call the method comas for upcycling, raíz. Raíz from root in Spanish and in Portuguese, like something fruit, because we try to keep all the information that comes in each garment, but we try to systematize this with some techniques for getting to upscale this thing. So here's something about what we do. When I started working with this in 2008, I was very shocked by the numbers of the dead stock that are formed after every collection in brands. For instance, in Brazil in 2018, almost 5.1 billion pieces were produced, only garments, not bed and bath and not accessories. 0.5% were exported, so we have there like 5-point-something billion pieces for internal consumption. And if we see the numbers through the market view, like brands, when they buy their collections, usually they will sell like 75% of the amount of clothing bought in full price, and then like 20% will be in sale with promotions, and we have there like 5% that will become dead stock. So when I started doing this in 2008, I wanted to cross this number to see how much dead stock was Brazil producing every year. And in 2018, this number was like 255 million pieces. So I was very shocked. And this is only Brazil, only garments produced in Brazil. We are not counting everything Brazil imports, that's a lot. And we are not even talking about post-consumer clothes. Those clothes we get tired of because they are old, you know what I'm talking about. It's only pre-consume waste, so it's really a lot. And then I realized that for getting to solve this problem, I should think of upscaling. So in my brand, we do these clothings from clothings and also from leftovers from production. And we also started to disseminate these techniques that we've been developing for systematizing the production in different workshops and trainings that we do. So to wrap up, I would like to show this picture just to let you reflect a bit. It's a work from Christian Boltanski, an artist, and he doesn't work with textile or fashion at all, but I think it's very nice image, very shocking for us to try to figure out how much is this dead stock that it's produced every year or every month in each city we live in each country and in the whole world, and how can we think of this as new material, to really think of something that can be circular, and how can we keep these clothes alive so they can be transformed once and again, and not go into landfills or being burned or being kept getting rotten. So that's it. I hope you enjoy. I think that's sorry.
Oh, is it wrong time to ask a question? I just wondered how many.
Oh, it's okay.
No,
How many pieces would you say are in that piece?
Sorry?
That art? How many pieces of clothing would you say are in that mountain?
I don't know.
Just approximately. Okay.
That's a good question. I really don't know. It's, but I guess like maybe half of it.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
I don't know. I'm just guessing. How much do you think? I don't know.
We could ask the artist that has his work exhibited outside, how many clothes did he use and make we can use as a...
Thank you.
Thank you, Agustina. We'll hear more from her after we introduce the other panelists, including Carla Fernandez. If you were lucky enough to be at the Denver Art Museum in February, you saw her speak in a panel discussion we had on cultural appropriation and appreciation. So we're extremely pleased to have her back in Denver so soon. Carla Fernandez is the founder of Tayo Flora. It's based in Mexico City. Carla's work is internationally acclaimed for its artistic design, which employs traditional Mexican textile techniques made in collaboration with Mexico's indigenous communities. Her work is not only about creation, but also preservation, which she does through an active archive including publications, documentary film and photos, and museum exhibitions. Please welcome Carla Fernandez.
Hello, my name is Carla. I'm from Mexico City. I am a fashion designer. And I'm very happy to be here in Denver with my friends and with these amazing ladies. I am going to read you the Manifesto of Fashion as Resistance. I wrote it 2 years ago, mainly for the people I collaborate with and to understand and to make sure that we can change the fashion system that we're living today. I'm not going to read it all because that would be more than 5 minutes. So I chose some of the fragments. And a friend of mine that is a poet translated for me. My English is not perfect, but here it goes. Manifesto of Fashion as Resistance. One day we woke up and realized we couldn't care less about what happens in Paris. We do what they told us not to do. Our way of doing things seems suicidal for business schools. Our garments smell of smoke. They're woven and embroidered next to the stove. We create few of them and we do it slowly. We are like grasshoppers in the fields, small but rambunctious. We work in a country with which 68 different languages are spoken. Textiles are our lingua franca. Among ourselves, we speak with fingers, pounds, and cubits. We use fabrics that were woven to be treasured. Our peel is an open book, and its brocades tell the story of how a caterpillar morphs into a butterfly. The same rectangle that is a skirt in the morning becomes a mat in the afternoon and a blanket at night. It's up to us to end the fashion as trash. We don't design garments to end up rotting in a dump. We say no to blood-sucking transnational corporations and to the mass production that is detrimental to our planet. Anonymous assembly is for the plunderers of souls. No to the false neoliberal urgency that season after season prioritizes volume over care. No to the uniform, no to the malinchismo, to the vile automated consumerism that favors all things parade. Let's not fool ourselves. We all participate in fashion. Let's say yes to unsubordinate creativity and yes to work free of distress. For us, to be original is to go back to the origins. In Mexico, high fashion is made in the mountains, the deserts, and the jungles. We make fashion alongside people whose roots are in the earth from which they sustain themselves. In the mountains, artisans harvest cotton, collect 7 branches with which to make a backstrap loom, and sitting on a woven palm mat, she makes a panel of fabric. If tomorrow the petroleum supplies is depleted, if there is no electricity or internet, and the industry is paralyzed, she will still do what she does. She will continue making her own clothing, growing her own food, and building her own home. She will do it tomorrow just as she does today, and just as her ancestors have done for centuries. The capacity to transform materials into sustenance is a key element in a way of life commensurate with nature, in which rituals, worldviews, and sciences are intervened. We pose the question, who should be learning from whom? For us, fashion is not ephemeral. Dead to planned obsolescence, which renders expandable all it draws into abyss of waste. The best design is not which disintegrates, but that which remains. We want our clothes to be so lasting that their whispers will be heard by other generations. Fashion is not ephemeral, neither is our planet, nor our relationships. Our relationships with the communities with whom we collaborate are abiding and found. And then we have other points, that is, tradition is not static, the square root. In true luxury, there is no oppression. I'm going to read this for you. How could we take pride in the luxury of our work if our production chain depends on the oppression of workers or the overexploitation of our planet's resources? True luxury is when the enjoyment and pleasure of some do not come at the cost of the suffering of others. True luxury is organizing a generous and gratifying system of work. Our notion of luxury is based on admiration of the fine and delicate artistic richness that comes from the hands of artisans. No to anonymous manufacturing. No to the theft of imagination for the exclusive benefit of commerce. No to the notion that the work of some is worth more than the work of others. No to the supremacy of the idea over the manufacturer. We understand that artisan processes require time to think, time to learn, time to transform and transcend. It is upon this notion of what it means to make that we build long-term relationships with a commitment of fair compensation as a symmetrical reflection of the effort. Then we have another parts that are everybody's beautiful and emanates vitality. The client is a collector. We are one and we are many, and the processes are a legacy. We always say that the future is handmade. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. We also have the fortune to have Christy Sumar, founder of Encircle. She's coming to us from Toronto, Canada. Formerly a management consultant who traveled extensively, she's coming from more atypical fashion background. But as a result of extensive travel, she sought to become a minimalist fashion designer out of personal necessity. She's now leader in the international eco-fashion movement and a major contributor to the revival of the garment industry in Toronto. This is where she locally sources the majority of her material, and I'll allow her to speak more.
Thank you so much for that intro. I love being called a leader. It sounds so fancy. Thank you. So I'm Christy. I'm very honored to be here with this amazing panel. Like she said, I'm not a fashion designer, so I actually have a finance degree and an MBA. I kind of fell into fashion because I was traveling and my suitcase broke, and I started to really analyze how much stuff I was bringing when I was traveling. And to me, it started feeling like, you know, if I can get away with being in a carry-on suitcase for 10 days, why do we need so much stuff in our closets at home? And I started doing a lot of analysis around how much stuff we're actually wearing. So on average, we have somewhere between 150 plus items of clothing in our closet, thank you. And we're wearing somewhere between 10 to 20% of them at any given moment. So that's a lot of resources that have gone into making those clothing, both financially, fabric, human resources, that's being wasted. So I became very passionate about exploring the idea of minimalism in fashion and how that can be integrated and bringing back that mentality around quality over quantity, and to really designing under the principle of less is more and embedding versatility into everything that we do from a fashion perspective. So it all started with this one piece, which is an 8-in-1 piece. It's a dress that turns into a cardigan and a scarf. And I literally launched the business with this piece and ran it like that for 2 years. And then decided to, much to my parents' chagrin, quit my full-time job and become a fashion designer. And we kind of scaled up from there. So like Jane said, we make everything in Toronto, Canada. That's an industry that was absolutely devastated when the duty law changes. In the 90s, about 80% of the apparel in Canada was actually made there, and then now it's less than 2%. So we've been really committed to bringing back that craft of apparel making back to Canada. All of our factories are located within 30 kilometers of our studio. We actually knit about 56% of our fabric there, and it's dyed there as well, which is very difficult to do because there's only one dye house left in Ontario. And again, we're really passionate about focusing on classic silhouettes and adding something really innovative to them. So whether it's making the perfect white t-shirt or a pair of sweatpants that you can wear to work, we believe that the future of our brand is really about blending comfort, style, as well as that timelessness that goes along with investing in apparel that is a little bit more expensive, but will last you a really, really long time. And for us, it's really all about doing more with less. So part of our mission is also teaching consumers. So a lot of people come to us never having shopped in an ethical fashion brand. So part of our role as a brand is to educate them on not only the industry, but how they can be a better conscious person in their everyday life. So we rely a lot on developing original content as well. We're very passionate about supporting other women-founded businesses, other conscious brands, and maybe we created our own marketplaces that we host. One is actually on Saturday, which is why I can't stay in your beautiful city for longer than a day. But we're very happy to support other brands and bring them together. And lastly, we're very proudly a certified B Corporation, which is something that happened a couple years ago. And really, we focused on building up our score, not only in sustainability, but ethics, as well as in our community initiatives as well. So I look forward to answering all your questions on the panel later.
Thank you, Christy. Robin, what do I do now? Do I do this? Okay. I'm inviting everyone to come sit, so then we can have a little fireside chat without a fire. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Is it on? So I'd like to rewind a little bit, and I had this joke where I was writing my questions that, you know, if you took a shot every time you heard the word sustainable, you wouldn't be able to go back to work. So I just wanted to really help define some of these terms. I think we all in this panel take for granted that we know these terms and how they're applied to fashion. But I'd just like to ask some of the panelists, you know, about some key vocabulary. Starting with Christy, I wonder if you know what your definition of sustainable and really ethical fashion means to you and your business.
Yeah, so in Circle, we think about it as fashion that doesn't harm people or the planet in the making of the product, as well as we also look a lot at the end of life use of the product as well as the production and design of the product. So for me, sustainability isn't just about picking, you know, the perfect fabric or doing it in a way where you're using like, you know, chemical-free dyes. It's in a way, how are you actually making that garment? How is the pattern made? How much waste is actually produced from that pattern? What happens to that waste after the pattern? It's a really all-encompassing, more holistic, I think, approach for us in Circle. And ethics is very core to what we do as well. So sustainability isn't just like an initiative at our company, it's embedded in everything we do, from the power we use to power our offices, green power, to the paper we use, to the fabrics we choose.
And so maybe you can speak to sort of the name of your brand Encircled in terms of what circular production means. I think that's another term that maybe people are not as familiar with.
Yeah, so Encircled originally, the name, I just came up with it in my apartment one night and it stuck. And it was really originally related to the first product that I showed you guys up there. It's a circle scarf. I thought it was being pretty genius, but then I started thinking about the idea of everything that goes into it and how fashion needs to be full circle. It needs to really benefit everybody in the process. You can't make a sustainable garment that's not wearable because there's no point to that. So it needs to be fashion that our customers can love, that is made really well, and the workers who make it are treated well, and in a way that the planet isn't harmed in the process as well. We also at Encircle take all of our production cuttings, so any excess fabric left over from production is always saved. And we actually have an entire accessories collection that's made from waste from production that otherwise would end up in a landfill. And that's something that is integral to our brand because we want to make products in a way that we leave as light of a footprint as possible on the planet.
Can you also just go back to what a certified B corporation means and how it applies to fashion?
Sure. Well, I saw it on the wall over there, so Certified B Corp, it's a third-party certification. Brands like Patagonia, Warby Parker, Ben & Jerry's is a certified B Corp. Oh, you are too? Oh, awesome. Yeah. So it's you can probably talk to it too, Carla. It's a very long process that you go through, and you basically are almost audited on everything you do, from how you pay your workers to where you buy your products, how much money you spent here, there, and all of your environmental initiatives. And it's very, they go very much in depth, and there's a lot of best practices for us that we learned from it that we were even able to integrate into our business to make it even better. So it's basically a commitment to use business as a force for good. It's actually literally Canada written into our corporate bylaws that we had to change our bylaws to write that in. So it means it's the foundation for every single business decision that we make. As well, it connects us obviously to other B Corps as well, which is a really amazing thing to learn from throughout the world.
So maybe Carla, you can speak about B Corps, what it's like in Mexico.
Well, for us, it was very important not to be judged by ourselves, because we had to be a third party. And that's part of our best practices in working as a sustainable fashion. So we looked for the B Corps, and as you say, it's a very tough process, and sometimes you don't even know what these good practices are. And finally, we got the certification, and it's inside of your workshop, and then also with, for example, we work with, we have our workshop that is 30 people working every day, and then we have the collaborations with the community, so they go all with the community and also in-house. So I think it's very important also to get together with these certifications that now we have them in Latin America, which is pretty new. I think we were the first brand in Mexico and Central. I don't know if they have them in Brazil or down. But as I said, for me it's very interesting not to be juez y parte. How do you say juez y parte? Like a judgment, and that it was not ethical for me to say, oh, I will decide what is, ethical price or payment or this treatment. Our brand at the beginning was more focused on ethical practices and how to work together with communities. I've been studying and fell in love with indigenous practices since I was very, very young. I am very fortunate to live in a country where 68 different languages are alive. We are, some say the third, some said the second one, with larger living indigenous communities after China and India, and you can see that Mexico is much more smaller. So I've been learning a lot of, for example, moving to more the cutting and not extra pieces of fabric. That is how indigenous clothing is made, because it comes out of the loom. So you just have to place those squares or rectangles, and we call it square roots. Actually, like for example, the dress that I am wearing, we don't have extras of fabric. Then the commitment of what is fair practices, for example, the payment that we talked about, that it's been certified by the Corps, or how can we work with someone that it belongs to all the community. If I work with this embroidery, for example, that is from Santa Marta in Chiapas, how can it be ethical to work with them? It's because I am working with the ladies, and they are okay to work with me and with our brand. And actually, 90% of the co-ops that we work with, they call us to work with them, not the other way around. So also that helps. And we have a magazine, we publish a magazine with all these ethical practices and how we are trying to end fashion as trash. This is only 2 points, and we have several more that we can discuss later.
Thank you. Augustina, can you help sort of define upcycled and how it applies in Brazil? I think we already talked about the amount of waste, but I'm curious, we talked earlier about how, approaching these brands for their dead stock and sort of talk about your process and how you obtain some of the material that you use to upcycle.
So, upcycle is a process for transforming dead stock or leftovers into high quality products. That's what I think it is. Of course, there are many ways of describing it, and it's also about this systematization for getting to do something about the high amount of dead stock and leftovers that are generated. So we add value and sense to this material that was discarded. So I work with men's shirts that for having defects don't arrive to the markets. So it's like very high quality shirts that have maybe holes or stains that are defects. So what is a defect? Why a hole is a defect? Why cannot we transform it into an effect and make this piece be unique? As for the transformation, we work with recipes. So we repeat, for instance, we have a dress that's made from a men's shirt, and then we use 2 shirts, and then cut here, sew here, and then you can have the same recipe reproduced for having, for not taking that much to create every time. Because when you work with upcycling or with waste in general, the pattern is irregularity. So you have to make this irregularity regular, some way to be able to make a production. Otherwise, you're always starting from scratch. So we apply these recipes, but the nice thing is that the final garment is always different, because we are working from men's shirts. We have there a pattern, like a category, but every men's shirt is different, because we get these stocks that are always different. So it's like making a pattern to having an outcome producible, but that will be always unique.
So to that, I want to ask the panel about how you educate consumers about how your pieces are made, or what the intention is behind your line. So Augustina, to speak to that, I think we talked about, how to kind of talk to people about the idea of conservation, about, this idea of what you just mentioned, what a scar is and what a defect is, and sort of how you help not only consumers but other, textile and fashion designers, how to speak to them about telling the public, it's that old is not necessarily a bad thing, that we can transform into a new creation. And also I think that there's a sense of, this reclamation maybe of the idea of couture, or what is actually handmade or unique, and this idea. So I'm wondering how particular to your business do you help educate?
We were talking about this with Carla. Can you listen to me? In the end, the consumer, what he chooses to do it's what really matters. And we were talking a lot about, and I think three of us have this view of making like long-lasting pieces. And from my work, I'm very focused on disseminating these techniques, also for fixing and mending and transforming clothes, for we to be empowered and know that we don't have to buy this newness thing that has been put into our heads must die. Because we are filling the world with a lot of shit. And what's nice is to have like pieces that, as Carlos Manifesto said, that will be, the whispers will be heard in other generations. I get really emotional when you said so, because I really work for doing pieces that will last for the quality and also for the style. What do you think?
And in our company, we see each other as cultural agents, in answering to your question. Because in order to translate how a garment is made in a community and then how all the cultural heritage that we are showing, you have to see it in a way. I mean, for example, in Mexico, we all have a shawl, like a rebozo. Maybe you have seen those beautiful shawls that the ladies carry their babies with, and they're so elaborate. They take 2 months to be done if it doesn't rain, because it's ikat. So they place, like outside of their homes, 30 meters of thread that is being woven, and then it's painted with a seal and knotted and deep dye, and then with a knife they take out those knots, and the beautiful pattern of the clothing that is later woven on footloom comes alive. And it's crazy, and we don't know about that. So we see each other you would tell the hidden stories of Mexican craft, which, for example, Hermes or Dior, or you have seen those beautiful videos that there is like this super handsome Italian putting a nail on an amazing bag, you know. But there are not that many of artisans around the world, or they're maybe not that popular, or maybe we don't have that much money, you know, to go in the media and just go that way. And so it's very important for us, and that's why I am very grateful with museums, because they have been always the ones that have given us a way to show our clothing, and the clothing that is made in the communities, in the indigenous communities in Mexico. So people understand the complexity of the technique, the beauty, and to see it, you know, you just fall in love, and then you understand the price of it, which is not even like a Dior couture. It's less, you know, but you have to see all these processes and understand the complexity, cultural and technically.
I think this one works, yeah. For us, I mean, I was on H&M's website the other day. We're often creeping, because we're an e-commerce company, so I'm often creeping other websites. And H&M in Canada right now has over 700 tops in stock. And we focus on, as I talked about a little bit at the beginning, quality over quantity. So I actually don't launch collections, I launch products, and that may be a function of my background coming from consumer packaged goods, but we will literally launch one t-shirt dress, and we will talk about it for like 6 weeks and build up anticipation, build up a wait list of people who are interested in the dress, and really talk about the function of the garment and why we're making it, and really integrate our customer into the process as well. So we do a lot of customer-centric design, where we'll reach out to our customers through email and Facebook and Instagram and have them co-create the design with us, so that we can make a garment that our customer is going to want to keep and wear. Because the worst thing I feel like I can do as a designer is make a piece of clothing somebody will never wear. It just breaks my heart when somebody's like, oh, I never wear this anymore. And I'm like, oh no, because it's like, just becomes another piece of like, you know, static wall art in your closet that you never even look at. So we focus a lot on building function and versatility into our garments, and that to me is really important from an education standpoint as well. Teaching customers how else they can wear it, how else they can style it, and not just always focusing on new news at our brand. And sometimes I feel like we're launching too many products, and then I'm like, wait, H&M just launched like 30,000 SKUs, so I have to really check myself. But it is about making that one product just the hero of our collection for that month or that season, and really focusing on that and helping consumers really invest in that. Because again, sustainable and ethical fashion inevitably costs more. So for us, we're trying to train consumers often from the Gap or Old Navy up to paying, $150 for our dressy sweatshirt. And that's not an easy value proposition for somebody, but if you can show them how they can wear that from day to night, how they can wear that on the weekend, or they can wear it at work, and use really beautiful fabrics and make it a really well-made garment, then you've got a customer for life.
And I think that's what we talked about earlier, is just how you are, changing the psychology of consumerism, and really being able to market longevity as this sort of antithesis to fast fashion. And that, fast fashion, if you look at the price, there's a reason why there's that price. There's definitely a chain of exploitation and anonymity behind it. And so that I think that the more that people are becoming aware of the makers and the time and process that is going into it, obviously people are I think shopping in a different way. Coming from a museum background, it's really interesting because we really look at people's closets as a collection and as shoppers as collectors. And so we're really, I think, also trying to inform people to think about fashion in a different light, and that these are pieces that you can be proud of and pass on. And also, this idea of, which I love about Christie's brand, is this sort of, uniform mentality. I definitely adopt that in my daily life. And so I think that it's really exciting to see these parallels within the slow fashion movement, and to see how we really can change sort of our habits. Within that, I'm curious then, how it trickles down to your production, and maybe if you can speak a little bit about the people that you work with, and within the holistic approach of production, and really how you're helping to educate people within your own companies, and Carla, in your situation with Indigenous communities, and Augustina with your workshops, and Christy, your impact of working as a prominent person in the garment industry in Toronto, really how your business models are impacting others within your own production teams, but also outside, amongst aspiring designers.
We talked about the square root, and that we follow the way. When I started working with communities, I was sent by the Mexican government 15 years ago to do new designs in the communities. So I went, I remember perfectly, I will never forget, with huge boxes for the 25 artisans that I was going to work in the highlands of Chiapas. So I took my measuring tape, the scissors, a book that they gave me as a tailor and everything, and those brigades were very unique of that time, of the 90s in Mexico, to start doing these collaborations with artisans. So first of all, it was very difficult for me to bring all those boxes because, up the hill, so all the little kids in the community had to help me because there was no way to go with the boxes over there. And then I arrived there, and they don't speak my language, they don't speak Castellano, they don't speak Spanish. So I sit down and I was like, this is so wrong. I am trying to make these ladies with thousands of years of knowledge to make hamburgers instead of making tortillas, This is not working. So, because they don't even understand the measuring tape, and not the rulers, and not, so all those boxes I put them aside, and as I said in the manifesto, I had to learn their technique. So I sat down, and I've been sitting down all my entire life to understand the complexity, and we have a very unique and endemic way of making clothing in Mexico, in the communities, and it comes from squares and rectangles. So I decided to start making tortillas, because also I had a lot of friends that came before me that were trying to do Italian fashion in Mexico, and it was a complete disaster. So when you understand this technique and you start making it the way they do it, obviously it's a success, because they have like the most, I mean, I work with the best designers in my country, which are the ladies in the communities, and they do fantastic things. And that changed all the equations. So for me, it has been, I mean, it's always in front of your face, and you just need maybe to sit down and listen and see what is going on to solve the problem. So it has been very successful for us to be humble enough, to work the way it has been done for thousands of years.
Yeah, so for me, all of our production partners, as I mentioned, are in Toronto. So they're all within 35-kilometer, I don't know what that is in miles, 3-mile radius, I guess, of our office. And we work with them very closely. So we're there almost every single week. When you think about it, most fashion brands visit their factories, like mass fashion brands, twice a year. And we're working within the province of Ontario, which is where I'm based, and we've got lots of labor regulations and environmental regulations as is. So there's the fashion industry, I think, notoriously has a lot of secrecy and a lot of it's a bit of a dirty business, and people don't want to share where things are being made because they don't want people to know that what they're paying workers and all that kind of stuff. So this movement towards transparency has been really motivating for me, and it's something that we have in our business as well. So on our website, if you go to it on encircle.co, you can see we list all of our factories. We actually do interviews with them, so we go and sit with them. Some of them don't want to be on camera, but we try and take slide photos of them. But these are very passionate people who, many of them are immigrants to Canada who have brought their craft from other countries into Canada and wanted to keep up with the industry, and they wanted to keep doing what they love. So we've been very happy to work with those partners and refer people to them, which is another thing that's totally bizarre in the fashion industry. Like, you ask somebody where they make something, they're like, I'm not telling you. But I want these businesses to grow. As I talked about earlier in the introduction, like, the fashion industry in Toronto, Canada used to be very, very big, and it's almost evaporated. So if I can't keep these factories going, I think if other brands are interested in making stuff there, then everybody's winning. So, like, one of our factories that I started working with, I call it a factory, there's only 30 people who work there. They literally started with 5 people, and then I thought they were amazing. It was run by 2 females who were also outside of the industry as well, but just very passionate about making clothing in Canada. And I refer all these new designers now that they work with, and sometimes they don't want to work with, probably, because new designers are the worst. I can speak to that, being a new designer at one point. But they've tripled their business, and now they have 3 spaces, and they're growing like triple digits in an industry that's been shrinking for the last 30 years. So I think that collaboration is really key, not only collaborating with our production partners, from saving production cuttings, but also collaborating with them to promote their businesses so that they can grow alongside us, and the whole industry can up-level as a whole as well.
Thank you for that.
At Commons we cut everything in our small warehouse in Sao Paulo. Our design department is 3 of us, and we cut it ourselves. And then we work with seamstresses that are in close neighborhoods. Sao Paulo is a very it's a very big city, so it's important to be in the regions. And we work with seamstresses that they work at home. They have their kids there, grandsons. It's very, very familiar. We go into their houses, and they have been developing these techniques together with us for building these pieces. So we cut everything. That the cutting is very important as well. We have like these cutting maps, and then we take them for them to sue. And we have our impact nowadays is a lot in the workshops we are giving. Many brands have been created in these workshops that we do to entrepreneurs and also seamstresses. So it's very nice and very rich for us to see these brands working with the techniques that we've been developing, making their own clothes and selling them in markets, or developing like their business from these trends.
Well, I want to speak again about Brazil, and really in the context of how the sustainable fashion movement has grown globally. We were just talking about how international this movement is. So really curious about what consumers in your places of origin, how they respond to sustainable fashion, also who maybe your brand peers are. But Agustina, we talked a little bit about Brazil. Obviously, it's rated as the second largest textile industry in the world in terms of raw materials, but it's actually the 10th largest exporter, importer of finished goods. So it really speaks a lot to sort of the colonial history of Brazil. But really, talking about how people in South America respond to upcycling. This would be my first part of my question.
That thing Jane was saying in the beginning, it's also something that happens in Uruguay, maybe in Mexico as well. It's something that comes from colony. So we export the raw material and import the finished product, sometimes made with our raw material. So this is what happened in many poor countries. But as for upcycling, my bigger connection is with Uruguay. It's already very small, but since I am from Uruguay, I go there every summer. I sell my clothes there during the year, and I also give workshops and trainings there. But in the rest of South America, I don't have much contact, and this I think that it's mainly because Brazil is like a continent in itself. There's so much to do inside Brazil that we tend to get close, and the scene, the sustainable fashion scene in Brazil has grown a lot in the last 5 to 6 years. I've been working with this from 2008, 11 years now, and in the beginning it was very rare to find someone to talk about this subject. And from 5 years now, a real movement appeared, and I think it's much to do with the fashion revolution movement. I don't know how this is in your countries. I think it's important that we talk about it. Does everybody know what's the fashion revolution movement? I'm gonna introduce. It's a movement that began in 2014, 1 year after the Rana Plaza building collapsed in Bangladesh. It was a building where a lot of workers for many huge brands in the world were working, and 1,000 people died. It was a real disaster. And some activists in London, including Ursula de Castro and Carrie Sommers, they started this movement that was quickly widespread in all the world. So in Brazil, it started in 2014. One of the girls that started it worked with Ursula in London. So it was like a way of gathering all the people that were thinking about with this mentality in the moment, but were everybody spread in the huge land of Brazil. So inside Brazil, the movement, it's really becoming like a business as well. We have the Brazil Eco Fashion Week. The pictures I showed in the beginning were of our second show. This is the third year that there will be the Brazil Eco Fashion Week in November. And it's like the business version of the fashion revolution, because
the fashion revolution is activism, and it has we are all part volunteers, educated a lot of consumers, and this is very important. We were talking before about this, and the Brazil Eco Fashion Week is the place where we can start growing this as business. That's very important as well, so we can transform the mentality of the consumers, offering other ways of consuming, actually, for having options rather than H&M. Ooh, my baby.
Carla, I'll switch to you. I mean, Carla, you've become, in my eyes, really an international ambassador, not only for Mexican culture, but for indigenous communities within Mexico. And so, to sort of speak about your role in Mexico and really your influence and using fashion as your platform.
Well, in Mexico now, there's a lot of things going on. We have a new president and a new Minister of Culture that is very focused on cultural heritage. And even, I don't know if you've been following this, but it's very interesting how the Mexican government now is making a law to protect indigenous collective property. This is the first country that wants to make it a law. It is very controversial and it's very difficult because every single community has its own heritage and its own ideas, but it's very interesting because it has to be done. I've been asked also to be part of the civic part of the group to discuss with the Senate and elaborate these laws. There is also an interest to present craft as an art, which in Mexico, FONART, that is like the main institution that has the connection with artisans, a long time ago was separated from culture and sent to development. And now it's again in culture. And we are making a huge exhibition and fair, hopefully in February next year, of crafts and exhibitions. And it's not only to make a homage to the artisans, but that it works for the artisans. So we have been also working with the government, for example, to change laws in, I don't know if this happens here in the States, but in Mexico, for people like me that works with communities, it was very difficult to show taxes, like hacienda, I don't know how you call it here, but to prove that I bought from this lady that took, from the land, and she sheared the sheep and took everything as handmade, to show the government that I bought like all this amount of money from her, because obviously she's not part of this system. So for me it was much easier to buy linen from Italy, because I could show them that I was importing or I was buying that. So together with 4 fantastic friends, we went and changed the law, so I could prove that I was buying from these artisans. So our role for us has to be very active. So you have to be very involved, which is crazy because you have to do, I do only 2 collections a year, but that is a lot. We have to spread the word of how Mexican craft is made. We have to change the laws. We have to go and discuss things. But I truly believe also that clothing is very political. I am very happy yesterday, maybe you give it for granted here in the States, I don't know. In Oaxaca, in one of a very conservative state, abortion became non-penalized. And it's only Mexico City and Oaxaca. And for example, we have been doing a lot of clothing and, you know, like also committed with Maria Verde, which is this participation of women trying to legalize abortion all over Latin America and Spain as well. And for sure you have it here. But we use clothing as well to make sure that this world becomes more ethical and more fair for all of us.
Christy, can you speak to really how, I think, you know, you're so close to us in Canada, and yet I know very little about the fashion system in Canada and the behaviors of consumers in Canada versus maybe, you know, the US. We talked a little bit about how you have a lot of clientele in California, but not yet quite in the US overall. If you want to speak to what's happening in Canada.
Sure. So the Canadian government doesn't really support the fashion industry that wholeheartedly. It's disappointing, I think, because from a manufacturing standpoint, it's very low priority. They're very passionate right now about technology, which I think is great, but at the end of the day, there's a very vibrant manufacturing community in Canada still, even beyond the fashion industry. So I'm always trying to lobby for programs that can help fashion designers, because one of the ways I started my business was by funding it almost in a Kickstarter-like model, but my own way, and having customers prepay for a product that wasn't even made yet, because getting financing and funding, if anybody in the room has their own business, is very challenging. Nobody wants to give you a line of credit or a loan or anything like that, especially in the fashion industry, so because it's very volatile and a lot of businesses end up going out of business after a couple of years. Consumers in Canada, though, are very interested in Made in Canada. I would say it's something Made in Canada resonates, and a lot of that work actually has probably come from a couple of very prominent brands that have come out of Canada that some of you guys may be familiar with, such as Canada Goose. Canada Goose, although they're no longer 100% made in Canada, I think all of their accessories are now made in China, but their jackets are still made in Canada. So that was very unusual, but that brand, I mean, I think it's been around for 35 years, but I think it's the son or the grandson who took it and kind of really scaled it, brought a lot of attention back to Made in Canada. And though I do not necessarily agree with some of their ethics around fur, they have done a good job of showcasing Canada as being notorious for quality and warmth. It is really cold in Canada, it is true. We do get a lot of snow, but and for reviving the manufacturing. So a lot of the facilities that they work with, like they've kind of been able to help rebuild that side of the business. So consumers are interested in that in Canada. And the States, I think Canadian made still resonates, but in a different way. I think it speaks to quality. It's just the market here is, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's becoming more fragmented, and there's lots of new brands launching in the ethical space and the sustainable fashion space, which I think is great because there's more choices for you guys as consumers. But it also means it's a little bit harder for brands like us who are still quite small but growing in Canada to break through in this market. So it's something for us that we're looking at doing more actual, getting back to in real life retail, so pop-up shops in the US in the next year or so, because one of the best parts of our brand is the fabrics. So when people actually feel the fabrics, they're like, I literally just want to drape it all over my body because it's so soft and so comfortable. So we want people to be able to experience the brand in person and go back a little bit to the roots of retail, which were those in-person experiences, and really helping our customers try on and style. We've built our own boutique in our actual studio where we do some manufacturing, and obviously we have our office and our workstations too. And seeing customers come in and talking to them and helping them style their outfits and showing them, and some of them bring in stuff and we help them style it with pieces in their existing wardrobe, is really rewarding for us, but it's also, more importantly, a very rewarding experience for the customer as well.
Augustina, do you want to comment? Elena? Well, I just want to say that, in a maybe hopeful note, that it's projected that, resale or maybe vintage fashion is supposed to surpass fast fashion in the next 10 years. So when you are thinking about investing in fashion, you can think about women like this behind the brands that you're supporting. And I do think that, it's really this time, as when we saw with the climate strike, that we really do have to act and really educate ourselves in terms of the fashion. I think fashion is often seen as frivolous, and also I think the luxury brands really dominate a lot of the fashion narrative. But I really believe that women and babies here are really revolutionary and so appreciative of their efforts, because it's obviously not easy hearing sort of their testimonies. I have no idea what time it is, so if someone can give me a time.
3:27.
Sorry, what is it?
3:27.
3:27. So I have a few more questions, but I do want to leave time for all of you to have questions as well. I guess I'll leave on that note of where you see, it's sort of a generic question, but where do you see the future of slow fashion, of your brand, and really, hopefully we can leave on a positive note.
I have maybe a utopical view, but we work this way. Otherwise, we won't be doing this kind of things. Of thinking that every brand will take responsibility for all its leftovers and dead stocks, and every brand will have, mostly these big brands really create dead stock. They will have a line inside their stores where all the products are made using dead stocks and leftovers. But I also think this is like a very dangerous thing, because as we upcyclers and the recycling industry also grows and develops, it also is solving the problem of the main industry. So by having the tools for getting to recycle and upcycle more and more and more, the big industry will be able and will be forgiven for producing more and more and more and more. So it's like a paradox for me, because I'm working with a goal, and the same goal can be turned against all what I think. So, but I leave it open.
I think this is better. No, this one. I think fast fashion has to be gone. There's no other way. And that depends on us. I don't understand how I have 2 kids and they're teenagers, and this knowledge of being happier depends on consuming is not working for anyone. So we have to work on that to erase our, all the things that have been put in our heads, and start thinking on today, the present, the past, how it was and it was working, and the future. So it really depends on consumers, and it really depends on how we tell our kids that, or us, we don't need 10 pairs of jeans, that you need to wear them 7,000 times to be sustainable. That's the way it is. A jean, to be sustainable, you have to wear it 7,000 times. So we just have to work all together in trying to solve this huge problem. And it's very easy. People always tell me, oh, how do I know this brand is sustainable or not? And just read about them. If they're talking about it all the time and showing you who made their clothing and how it's made, and you know, like Fashion Revolution with Carrie Summers, that you have these symbols that says, I made your clothing. I even have a friend that is developing an app that you can follow all the production line and the creative line, and you can talk with the people that make the clothing. And we have to start following those lines if we want to continue being part of the solution and not being part of the problem.
Very similarly to what Carla was saying, I think there is a huge consumption problem. So if you think about H&M switching over to sustainable fabrics, they're still producing an insane volume of clothing, and that clothing has to go somewhere. And not only that, are they teaching people that they always need something new, latest, and greatest, and building clothing that's essentially built to fall apart. So that whole business model needs to stop. And I think at Encircled, we talk a lot about being more with less, and that idea of living with less, and how freeing that can really be. And I would challenge each and every one of you, if you feel like you could never have, you know, a capsule wardrobe of 33 items in your closet, like go home tonight, flip all your hangers around in your closet, and then over the next month or so, as you wear stuff, flip it around. But I guarantee you're not wearing half your closet at least. And a lot of us are holding on to pieces for emotional reasons, which is totally okay. But if there's stuff that you're buying over and over again, like oftentimes like you end up with like 18 white shirts. It's like you don't need that many. So we really need to focus on those principles of minimalism, and I think those are very scary for people because shopping is a very emotional habit for a lot of people as well. And I think sometimes the media will perpetuate that too. But we have to take accountability as well as ourselves as consumers, that we need to choose intentionally when we're buying our clothing and be very thoughtful and do the work to investigate. There's lots of great brands out there. I was just talking to Cullen, who runs Done Good, which is an app that has a bunch of ratings of different brands. Like, there's so many resources out there where you can find new and amazing ethical brands. So I encourage you to get out there and just explore and support some of those brands and vote with your wallet.
It's really true. In preparation for this panel, I took a lot of time to sort of deep dive on the internet, and it is really amazing to think about, you know, fashion sort of similar to the food movement again, you know, and Agustina and I were talking about, you know, really thinking about clothing as the same as gardening almost, you know, it's almost like a practice that you have this relationship with your clothing where, you know, you should care more. I think that we should all just really care more about what we put on our backs and go back to that sort of romanticization of sort of the couture world and how things were handmade and meant to last a lifetime and maybe multiple lifetimes. And I think also, you know, I'm really impacted by, you know, a lot of the tenants of Patagonia, which I think is, you know, doing a lot of work, and they're very interesting in that, you know, they have the revolutionary campaign in 2011 that says don't buy this shirt. You know, I think that there is a lot to be said that that's still a very powerful message to consumerism, and really again to deflect sort of our habitual nature to want something new. With that said, I'll open it up to questions in the audience. I'm not sure, maybe there's is there a system for this? Blue? In the blue, I guess holding the mic.
Yeah, good afternoon everyone. I'm very Garcia Tellez from City of Longmont. I want to ask the panel if you guys have recommendations or best practices for low to middle income people, because I'm trying to build programs for them to apply sustainable fashion. One of the recommendations I give them is to go to second-hand, like thrift shops. But I don't know if you guys, according to your experience, have more best practices. Thank you.
Did everyone hear the question?
Yes, go to second hand, and also to get involved with the clothes and try to put hands on. I think when we were talking about mending and fixing and like getting involved with the clothes they already have and the clothes they find in the, and customizing, I think that would be a good way of working.
Yeah, one thing that I always suggest is clothing swaps. And I don't know if they have them here, but we have them actually in our community in Toronto, and they're awesome. We did a whole video on how to do a clothing swap. We do it at our office too, and I think it's super cool to take clothing as a community, come together and trade. I mean, there's so much stuff, as I talked about, that we're not wearing in our closet. So organizing that or coordinating something like that in your community can be a great way to do it for basically for free.
Anyone in this section? Go by section. Anyone in this section? Okay, middle.
Okay. You talked about sustainability, and I think I was with you on a macro level when you defined it, Christy. But now I realize I really don't understand it, because Carla, you said a pair of jeans that takes 7,000 wears to make that sustainable, and I would love to understand at a detailed level what sustainability really means. How did you come up with the 7,000?
It's very complex and it's very difficult and sad, because yes, like all the processes, first of all, cotton is one of the most aggressive cultivos, harvests in the world, because of the amount of water that it takes. And then you have to, like clean the fields and take out like all the trees, and it's very hard also. All the pesticides are horrible, and it's very difficult to take it out of the flower. So, and another example, like the zippers, it takes 500 years to be dissolved in earth. So that's why I am very interested in the sustainable way of indigenous communities in this country, in my country, in every country. Because if you see the relationship they have with the land, because they are in this balance with the land, you would see that, for example, the skirt that is made by Maria in their homeland, by her, she would use it for 5 years, and she would use it as a cover. And then she will, it's dyed with mud, and it's all, like all these things had to do with how it was before the Industrial Revolution. How we had like this connection, not only with the land, but in work, in production, because now it has become too much. So we are taking too much from the land and we're not giving it back. There's no way we can sustain this. Like the American way of living, it's too much. We cannot, all of us, sustain to have 2 cars at home or 3 cars, or the amount of even hot water, etc. Because it's not natural. And we're taking all these elements from nature and just putting them over there, and now we see like all these crises. It's not, we have in Mexico the American way of living as well, we have a lot of cars, we have a lot of pollution, we have things that we're taking out and not giving back. I don't know if I answered your question. Yes?
I'll think about it some more too. Thank you.
Hello, thank you to all the panelists and the hosts for being here and having such great answers. Carla, I have a question for you. As the global consumer demand to support sustainable products and indigenous communities continues to grow around the world, I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on cultural appropriation as it relates to consumers who want to support certain communities. Consumers want to wear these clothes because they're awesome and they signify something that they identify with. But yet there's speak, especially in America, of cultural appropriation. Curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes. Thank you, and I think it's a very important question. And I always, I have, in Mexico we don't have that much concern if you go to a market and you buy a huipil and you use it, because we feel that she's doing it for me to consume it. But I have friends in the United States that they love the piece, but they don't feel comfortable using it because they think that they're not part of that community, and they would feel that they're having, like a cultural appropriation on wearing it. And I always tell my friends, if they go to Mexico and they go to a market, to ask the lady that is selling it if it's okay for her that that person uses it. And I have asked them and I work with them and they will say yes, because they're made for the tourist market. I know it's different here because I was invited to the symposium, which it was fantastic, and some of the panelists were indigenous, American indigenous designers and artists, and for me it was very interesting. I think the problem comes, and that I learned in the symposium at the museum, it's when you like the clothing, or you like the food, or you like, but you don't like the people that make them. Like for example, what happened just with Carolina Herrera, or was Gordon just took 3 pieces of embroidery and weaving from very specific communities in Mexico, and just as an inspiration. And he said that it was, and then obviously it was a scandal, and he said that it was a homage to America Latina. First of all, when you are from America Latina, we never say, oh, I am from America Latina. I say, I'm from Mexico, I am from Mexico City, and the same happens with these communities. If you want to make a homage, first of all, you have to work with the community. Because I don't understand why, if I steal an idea from Comme des Garçons, or Givenchy, it will be, like a scandal if another designer steals exactly that same motive. But why it's not a scandal if you're stealing from a like the Nango embroidery? Why it's not? So this is like the, like very Western thinking of individual. Oh, I am stealing that person, but oh, collectiveness. Oh, that belongs to everyone. Doesn't belong to everyone. It belongs to that community. If you want to work with them, they will be very happy. If you go with the community and tell them, please, Carolina Herrera, let's do this. And she actually made bags with the community before in that specific thing. And the other thing that I was proposing is, okay, if you don't want to make it in the community and you want to mass produce it in India or in China, you have to ask the community for permission. And they will decide if they will give it or not. Maybe they say yes, and what they want in exchange of it. So I think it's as simple as that. If you like something, you go with the community or with a lady that makes that. Oh, I would love to do this. Okay. If the numbers don't give up, okay, no, I have to mass produce them because, I want to have like this amount of earnings. So you have to go to the community and ask for their permission and see what they want in exchange. That's what I think.
I really appreciate the focus on sustainability, and you said farming and compost is something that triggered me, because in the idea that a pair of jeans needs to be worn 7,000 times because of the pesticide and damage to the earth, we don't see as much recycling of the fabrics afterwards, right? So paper, the longer the fiber, the stronger the fiber, the more desirable it is for recycling. But I fear that this technology, this business of taking old clothes and breaking them down to make new material out of them is being missed out on in this effort to be sustainable, environmentally conscientious, and giving back to the earth as much as possible. So I'm wondering if any of you have some thoughts that you can talk about.
Yeah, I've talked a little bit about it. There is a company in the States called Biennial, and what they've been working on is fabric recycling, like breaking down cotton basically and bringing it back to life. One of the challenges I know with fabric recycling like that is a lot of fabrics are mixed fibers. So when you're breaking them down, it's very difficult. It's almost impossible because you have spandex interwoven with polyester nylon. So separating those fibers is very, very hard. For us, we like to take it, like we take all of our scraps and we try to find new uses for it. In Canada, in the province of Ontario where we're from, there is actually a textile recycling program that's being piloted right now. And I know the city where we're from, it's something that's being rolled out in the next couple of years because there is an incredible amount of textiles that ends up in landfills. And a lot of that recycling is not true upcycling, it's downcycling. So a lot of it is shredding and turning into insulation and industrial products. What I'd like to see more of is what you're talking about, like taking actual fibers and re-knitting them into something more valuable.
Yeah, that's actually a problem because most of these clothes made by fast fashion, they have polyester, and polyester cannot be mechanically recycled, only chemically, do we say, like chemically recycled. So it's very complex for being recycled. So downcycling happens because when the fabric or the clothes are desfibradas, I don't know how this is said in English, they're like cut, then they become like very poor fibers because they get very short, and or they have to be mixed with other raw fabrics, like for instance PET, like bottles, you know, or they become like these mattresses we see for homeless. And this is a downcycling. So we have a lot of clothing that cannot become anything. They are not circular. So for being able to recycle, we have to keep the materials the rawest we can, like cotton with cotton, or viscose with viscose, and avoid petroleum-based fabrics.
There is a way also that can be made, and there is a very interesting project in Guatemala that is called the New Denim Project. And I agree, and it can be done if you recycle by hand. There is in Mexico, and if you go, because I mean there's a lot of problems that you solve with that. If you pick up by hand, then you can put like the colors together apart, the fabrics apart, and then you can manage to recycle a lot of it, you know? So that solves like a lot of, you know, like work, people like, you can give work to people, you can recycle, but it's again the trend of, oh, machines, machines, machines. If it's done by a machine, it's not working. There's a lot of people that need work, they would be very happy. So in countries like ours, you can recycle better than in countries that are fully, you know, mechanized.
And that's why upcycling is a good choice for these cases where recycling is not possible, because it's more to do with handmade as well. It's more like artisanal and not so mechanical. So we work a lot with communities in these workshops we do, and seamsters that they don't have technology, and they have like a sewing machine, and we can make a lot of things for transforming these dead stocks and leftovers handmade.
Thank you all very much. Actually, I have two questions for you. One is, I buy just about everything from thrift stores. Honestly, from my clothes, my furniture, just about everything is secondhand. Except a few things. I buy Patagonia. You know, I try to, when I am making those sorts of choices, is there kind of a best practice, for instance? Am I buying thrifting, for instance, am I sort of living under a false assumption that, oh, I'm doing the right thing and that's the best possible thing I can do? Or indeed, is that good? I know there's other things I can probably do as well, but do you have any, am I fooling myself? Are there better things I can be doing?
No, I think it's a great approach to go thrifting. It's like very good approach because in the end, we're talking only about sustainability and eco-fashion, or like environmental impact. The more sustainable thing is that one that already exists. But here, when we talk about sustainability fashion, something broader with social impact, as Carla's work, political impact, then you could also include some clothing, for example, from a local designer where you know where his fabrics were sourced from and who made the clothes, to know that you, because when we buy, we are voting as well. We are supporting, we say, I like this business, I want to support it. But it's very good, your approach, I think.
Yeah, I wish everybody was as conscious as you. I think it's a great, what you're doing already is so great. And really that thoughtfulness and intention is what I want everybody to practice. And I think people can get very judgmental around sustainability, not only from judging themselves, which it sounds like you're judging what you're doing, but others, the fear of others judging me because I'm not as sustainable as I could be. But the reality is there's no perfect way to be sustainable. It's progress over perfection. So I think we're all trying to move towards that journey. So even the little things, like even if you can't buy a thrifted thing, or being more thoughtful about where you buy your next winter jacket, those little steps are repeated by millions of people are what's going to make the difference at the end of the day.
I think it's ironic too that there's a criticism about thrifting, because I think the opposite has been true historically, right? Or just in my lifespan, about that thrifting used to have a stigma, and I find it so lovely that now, there is a pride really to it, and that people, we were talking about this earlier, how, it really is a source of pride, because it's a form of activism to be able to buy secondhand. Did you have another part of your question?
I do, and also you have inspired me. You all have inspired me to actually learn to sew. Thank you very much. Literally, if the button's falling up, I'm like, oh God, what are we gonna do? My second question: when we came in, we were encouraged to pick up a bow, and I'm wondering why. If there was something specific. Although now I'm still trying to learn to sew, maybe that's the inspiration, but was there something specific?
I think it's because Condé Nast was gracious enough to help sponsor the Biennial, and because they do have a sustainable fashion article within their issue, their September issue. It was a gift. I do want to speak out for the luxury fashion world. Having just done a major Dior retrospective, I do think that there are, by these much larger fashion corporations, they are also, doing their part incrementally. There was just a pact made in France by Emmanuel Macron, and there's 32 corporations, fashion corporations, as you may know, are umbrellas for many brands. So there's over 150 brands who've signed this pact to become more sustainable. So I think there's a lot that's really being reflexive in the high fashion world right now. So, I do think that, on every spectrum or on every, point in fashion, that, this is really an initiative for everyone to participate in.
Yes, thank you for being here. You are a great inspiration for me. As a fashion designer, I want to ask, how do you brand in your name, and how do you start to selling where is a good place to start selling your products, and how people can know more about you? I design wedding gowns, and I do from scratch also, but also I work with bridal consignments, and I work with vintage dresses and everything, and I transform it But also we have a lot of leftovers, and we do veils, and we do skirts and flower girl dresses. But I want to know how I can start selling. What is the good place to start selling my products?
Well, I think you have to understand your clientele. For me, that I am more self-taught designer. First, I started to do all the things that I read in books that I should do as a fashion designer, like to go to fairs and in my business and how I do clothing, it didn't work for me because I didn't have enough time or it was not the correct space for people to understand the complexity and obviously the price point of the clothing that we make. So you have to see what you do. For example, in the fairs, they were only looking for low prices to buy in wholesale. So we had to move all the way and go to very specific fairs like the folk art market where you had like all these clients that all understood what you were doing and they would actually helping us, to do the price point, etc. So it's a tough question because we don't know your brand, we don't know who your clients are, and you have to go and I think when you have like that feeling and ask, and all the people that you know that have been to that fair and don't be shy and ask everyone.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, like success leaves clues. So I often ask customers how they hear about me, and then I start like making, like at the beginning, like now I have analytics because we have mostly interact online, but at the beginning I would just ask, how did you hear about me? Oh, I saw you on like a travel blog. I'm like, oh, interesting. So that seems to work. Okay, so maybe I'm gonna go work with like a handful of travel influencers and try it out. It's kind of like there's no silver bullet. You have to try things out to see what works best to get your name out there. But try and spend some time with some of your best customers that you've ever had and see how they found out about you. See where they spend their time online. And are they on Instagram or Facebook? And start honing into and designing that kind of ideal customer and who they are, who she is. And then that will help you learn more about where to find her.
It depends a lot on how the market you are into works as well. For example, in Sao Paulo, we have some fairs that are not wholesale fairs, that are retail fairs. And they are very nice for me, for instance. They were very important, and I did a lot until I found one that really represented me and where my client was. So you have also to like try, it's trial and error. You go and make mistakes quickly. You try, find, no, it's not that way. But it's important like to find your customer, to find it. As Carla said, you have to know who your customer is and to find it, to be able to talk face to face.
How do you price your products? Because like me, it's like my work is like a huge couture from all bridal gowns, and it's a lot of work I put in each dress. Each dress is very unique and exclusive. No other one. Sometimes I don't know how to price,
What I can tell you is what not to do. Don't price your gowns with all your expenses in one thing, because that is a terrible thing to do. So suppose because there's like a lot of new designers that their clothing is so expensive and then it's like, why? Oh, because the light and that and I sell 3 things. So I don't know, again, I don't know your business, etc. But don't put all the expenses in a few garments because then it's too high, And don't go too low either, But you have to maybe, I don't know, then you have to go to a more specific assistance. I think we want to ask a question.
Yes, Jane, you had said something that really, the word really stuck out to me, but we get our fix. Like we get that. And then you guys were briefly talking about the psychology of wanting more. So I'd like to hear from all of you just one sentence on how other ways can we get that fix when we want to buy something like that has nothing to do with consumerism.
You can meditate. Literally stop and remove yourself from the store and take a couple of deep breaths and ask yourself if you really need this item or if you're buying it for some other reason. That's my best advice.
Well, maybe I would talk about clothing again, but I think what has worked for food hasn't worked for slow fashion. So like, and it has worked for food because when you eat it, you know that you're gonna feel better, you know? And it's yourself and it's your body that if you have like healthy food. But it hasn't worked that way in fashion because it's someone else that is suffering. You know, it's someone else that is doing the maquila or someone else that you don't see, or the planet that you just go like, okay. So if you think on slow fashion the same way you think of food, then maybe that can help.
Yes, you can also think about everything you already have. And probably you will see that you will need it.
I myself have a problem, so I'm going to admit it, but I find that, you know, people in the past have told me, you know, to really study what it is that you're attracted to, and then kind of like what we're talking about, deconstruct and really think about how you're justifying that, and really what is it that you like about it. I think that, you know, being a consumer of fast fashion, we can all agree that, you know, usually we're in a hurry, we don't feel like, you know, we have enough resources, and we need to wear the thing that's brand new for the next thing. And I think that that to me is the hardest psychology to break, you know, being in a museum field and needing to wear something to an opening and wanting to wear something new every time. And I think for me it's really breaking down that stigma of having the self-confidence to say, you know, it doesn't matter what I'm wearing. It matters that I'm there and I'm showing up and I'm supporting whomever is there. And I think that to me is really where I want to start in terms of, you know, kind of letting go of those old patterns. So on that note, I think Elena is ready to go. I don't know if anybody else has questions, but we'll mingle around after. Oh, I'm so sorry to cut you off.
I don't know if I'm asking the right question to you all, but with handmade word thrown around, you know, in Etsy, now Amazon handmade, what strategies do you use to separate yourself? I mean, like marketplaces now, they sell handmade, they tell that they are selling handmade, but I see all the wholesalers selling like mass-produced, you know, in Etsy has become one. So how do you separate, what strategies do you use to separate yourself from that kind of crowd?
Well, I think I can speak for some of them in the sense of, you know, that they're holistic practices. They're not just about products. And to me, I think that what kind of distinguishes all of them is that there's really an ethos and a philosophy behind what they're doing. And I think oftentimes even sustainable has been used so widely that it loses its meaning. But I think when you look at really the bigger picture of any of these businesses, you know, we were talking about, you know, Augustina is in the community, she teaches, Carla has these amazing, you know, lookbooks which are way beyond a lookbook. You know, it's really an encyclopedia of her collection that really gives a 360-degree look into what has made the collection that she's presenting at that time. And I think the same for Christy, and we talked about this, how she's using her product in a way to help, again, educate the community, having, you know, clothing trading swaps and being able to really do these closet challenges. And so I think, to me, they're really more about a social practice and encompassing it as a lifestyle versus just something, we could talk about H&M again, when they write that they have a conscious such and such, it is sort of an oxymoron because of the volume. So I do think that there's varying degrees, I think, in all of these brands and in fashion in general.
Can I piggyback this question? So there may be some people who are involved with small villages. I come from Nepal,
and I am involved with some villages in Chitwan, and it's similar kind of things you're talking about, So to promote them in this field of mass production was my question. How to separate yourself and build the kind of platform you guys have built, basically, and promote the local artisans from remote villages of Nepal.
Yes, I think it's a very good question. It takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of, so we are fighting to, maybe when I think of what we're trying to do to change the fashion system, it can be, as I said in the manifesto, suicidal. But I just put that idea aside, and I think it's what we have to do. And you go with all your energy and with everything that you have around you to try to make that happen. And it's like, I always give, I don't have money to pay the photographers or the video, but I have clothing. So I tell the best photographers in my country, come with me and I will trade you clothing. Or come with me and then we'll do this. And I'm always, trying to do these exchanges because we don't have the money that the big brands have, but we have other things to help me to do these videos, to help me to spread the word of how these things are made, and to just keep going, and spread the amazing, crafts of Nepal. But you have to be very stubborn, and you have to love it because it's, and we don't win, it's very, obviously I have a beautiful life, and, but if I would be only interested in the money, I will be suffering horrible. I have what I need to live, and what my family lives to need, but I don't have that, it's like the president of Uruguay said, politicians wouldn't love money. So like everyone in the world, because otherwise you get very greedy and you only think about that you want more money, instead of giving that money to all the production and the creative change. And only few are winning what they should win, like more, and the other ones not. So we need to start thinking like that, and just think of our businesses as local, contained, sustainable, and then make more people share knowledge. So other people can do what you're doing, and then we become a lot of us that are fighting with these people. So I cannot give the work that I would need to all these people because it's me, with a team obviously, but it's one brand. So what I do is I do exhibitions, I do books of what I've done right and what I've done wrong, what my mistakes are, and share that knowledge so other people can follow your path or unfollow it.
It takes time, as Carla said, and it's important to show how things are done in the backstage, because there's the difference. Because when they say, it's a collection, sustainable, but you don't see what's actually being made and how, you can doubt. But if you're doing something unique, and if there's a real process behind, then you have to show it. So it's not only about selling the products, but also about educating the consumer by showing all the processes that are behind.
that note, we're out of time. Thank you all for joining us and listening to